when psychological therapy becomes a business and it becomes commercial, something funny happens to it. Commercially orientated psychological therapy inevitably presents itself, or promotes itself rather, as being a tried and trusted technology. This is absolutely the case. You get that feeling so strongly whenever you come across adverts for psychological therapy of a commercial kind. The whole message is, we've got the expertise, we've got the tried and trusted stuff that can help you, we've got the latest scientific understandings that are underpinning the whole thing. And it all sounds very slick, and it all sounds like a technology. Technology is different though. Technology you can rely on. That's why it's technology. If you had a toaster that toasted only sometimes but not always, you'd throw it away. If you had a computer that started only when it felt like it and only worked the odd time, you wouldn't have anything to do with that. A computer works every time you turn it on if it's not broken. A Hoover hoovers, a toaster toasts. That's what we expect from technology. Technology is a set of rules and procedures that works, and it works every time. Loads of things like that. Now that I come to think of it, if I'm scribbling on a piece of paper with a pencil, that works every time. It always makes marks on the paper. That's a technology. It could be art as well, but it's primarily starts off from being a technology. We have that thing that we can take for granted, that when I start writing with a pencil or a pen, it's going to make marks on the page. So we all understand technology, and we know that technology, when it's properly tested and when all the bugs have been worked through, is super reliable. It will get done what we want to get done. And there's no two ways about that. That's anything we're interested in, and that's anything we're going to settle for. If you said, well, this toaster isn't toast bread, but it's a very good paperweight, we wouldn't be interested. We only want it to do what we want it to do. I know I'm labouring the point, but it needs labouring. Because when we come to psychological therapies, that's not the story at all. It absolutely isn't the story. I would go so far as to say that anyone who's been working a long time in the field knows that. Maybe they won't go around saying it. It could be a kind of discouraging thing to say. But I would say that anyone who's worked a good while in the field of mental health or in the field of psychiatry, we know that therapies aren't a tried and trusted technology that always have the result. It's not like a toaster will always toast. And yet we've got this amazing blind spot that we don't actually address this. So from the point of view of the commercial entity that is selling its expertise in psychological therapies, straight away, right from the onset, they're guilty of subterfuge, deception, trickery, con artistry. They're just like any other dodgy outfit that wants to scam us. Absolutely. Now, we might say, okay, the world of business, there's always going to be spin, there's always going to be promotion, there's always going to be that kind of silly type thing. We come to expect that, and that's fair enough. But when you're talking about psychological therapy, It isn't fair enough at all, because the only way psychological therapy, if we allow that there is such a thing, which we could debate, but the only point about it is it has to start in honesty and be honest the whole way through. Absolutely. If I'm a client or a patient, my role is to be honest about what's going on. If you're a therapist, your role is to be totally honest and transparent. That's the only way you've got a chance. You can't go bringing bullshit into it. Bullshit is non-therapeutic. Pretending is non-therapeutic. So when we pretend that therapy is a tried and trusted technology, we've absolutely ruined everything right from the onset. There's no way that psychological therapy is a tried and trusted technology. A tried and trusted technology means I do A, then B happens. That's causality. We're so used to causality, we rely on it all the time. Absolutely. Almost all of the things that we do, we rely on causality, and causality doesn't fail us, generally speaking. It does sometimes. But in the physical world, causality, it's so close to being a golden rule, we can accept it as being a golden rule, i.e. a real rule, a rule that never gets broken, a rule that really is a proper rule, that has no exceptions. I put a saucepan of cold water on the electric ring or gas ring on my cooker. It'll warm up. Causality. It never happens that you find yourself there turning the ring up or the flame up to maximum and sitting there hour after hour and the water doesn't heat up at all. That doesn't happen. Never happens. If it did, you'd start to think, I must be in a dream. This is one of those it's a dream situation. It's not a real life situation. So there we are. That's why we rely on causality so much, because it absolutely is reliable, provisionally so. But pragmatically, in the physical world, it doesn't let us down. No, this does not translate into the psychological sphere. We might think, oh yeah, it will translate. Of course it will. Let's just say that it translates and carry on the same. That's what we do say. But no, it does not translate. And if we paid attention, we'd realize that it doesn't translate. So the degree to which we don't pay attention is astonishing. It's fantastic. How have we not paid attention to this? Do we call ourselves researchers or scientists or clinicians? Or we can't call ourselves anything if we don't pay attention. We could call ourselves clowns, perhaps. But we can't be taken seriously if we just charge ahead with absolutely no attention to what's going on and no thought given to it. So there's loads and loads of examples how causality doesn't work in the psychological sphere. We all know this, we just don't join the two together, we just don't join the dots. I'm lost even trying to think where I should begin. Supposing I go out with a friend and we go out and we have a meal. Now, causality comes into play there because I can get to the place, we can get to the place, we can order the food or whatever. Generally speaking, catch the waiter's eye or whatever, you go to the counter if it's not that kind of a place and you say, yeah, can I have whatever the hell it is? And assuming you pay the money, causality means that, yeah, you will get the meal. So that's unproblematic. What is problematic is whether we have a good time, whether it's enjoyable. Now, of course, we all imagine that if we control the parameters down to the last degree, then we will get to have a good time. We will get to enjoy it because we've made sure. But we know that doesn't happen. We know that very often, if the more we try to make sure we have a good time, the more likely it is to explode in our face. And if we get super controlling, super obsessive and control every single detail and keep on monitoring and controlling and monitoring and controlling, we're going to have a terrible time. That's going to be a nightmare. If you went for a meal with someone like that, you'd run away, you'd make an excuse and disappear and not come back. That is appalling. So, how it works, any way it can work, is we do what we can do, we organise what we can pragmatically and appropriately organise. Then we let go and see what happens. Is a good time had by all, or an indifferent time, or an okay time, or a shit time? Who knows? But the key point is we let go, because at that point we can't control. There's no causality. There's no set of conditions that will, if put in place, will lead to us having a good time. So the key thing there is letting go. Letting go isn't a technology. The letting go of technology here, the latest evidence-based technological approach to letting go, because letting go is the opposite of technology. Technology is the opposite of letting go. Technology is all about making sure, monitoring, checking, getting the feedback. Is it working as it should do? Correct. Is it working correct a bit? Is it obsessive monitoring and controlling? That's what technology is. You have very narrow parameters and we stick to those parameters, and that's not letting go. You can't let go by being totally obsessive. So just making the point that there can be no technology of letting go. There can be no experts that can talk to us about it and tell us. Because letting go is letting go. It's letting go of the technology. Letting go is letting go of the technology, letting go of the cause and effect, letting go of the control, letting go of the goddamn experts. Let go of those experts. Let go of them. To hell with them. Let go of them. That's what letting go is. Letting go of everything. What's going to happen then? Who knows? We don't know, because we've relinquished control. We don't know. That's mentally healthy. Letting go and not knowing. Controlling and knowing, mentally not healthy, mentally super suffering producing, mental pain producing. There is a world of pain there, and the door's open in it, and you're in that world, and you can be in that world as long as you like, and even when you don't like it, you can still be there. That's what controlling and knowing, being in control, knowing what you want, and knowing that's bad stuff. That's being trapped in your own mind. That's being fearful of reality. That's creating your own virtual reality in your head. That's suffering. That's illusion. Because no reality in your head is real, even though it's real for us, because we're trapped within it and we have to observe the pseudo facts, or the rules that aren't really rules, but which we have agreed to be rules. So it's real in that sense, but it's not real. It's only real because we say it's real. Reality is made up of freedom, not rules. Reality is always a surprise to us. It's not an outcome we've previously decided on. So another example, maybe a bit more general than talking about going out for a meal and having a nice time or whatever it is, will be happiness. So no matter which way we look at it, we've got to say, okay, happiness has got, that kind of has something to do with them when we're having a discussion about mental health, whatever we might think happiness is. As Krishnamurti says, we tend to think happiness is the same as pleasure when we engineer a situation which agrees with us, or which favors our biases, or which suits what we want. That's pleasure. Pleasure feels good, so we might think, well, pleasure feels good, happiness feels good. What's the difference? The difference is that pleasure always flips around to pain. Pleasure is pain. And so really, at the end of the day, if we're going for pleasure, we don't get pleasure or pain. We just get nothing, because we don't get anything real. Pleasure isn't a real thing. It's compensated for by pain. So it's like a positron and an electron. They're mutually compensating. Each compensates for the other. So the net result is nothing. Happiness, on the other hand, has no reverse, no inverse, no flip side. Why? Because when it's pleasure we're after, we're conforming to the continuum of thought, to the continuum of logic, and we can never do anything that's not logical. We're stuck to this logical surface, and all logic is inherently self-contradictory. All definite logical statements are always self-contradictory, although we are admittedly very far from seeing that in our everyday lives. Happiness, on the other hand, we could say, is a result of not controlling, not stressing, not having ideas that we need to fulfill, not any of that crap. It's letting go. So happiness is letting go. We're not getting things to be what we want them to be, which is what messes us up every time. So happiness is letting go. We could say, what is happiness? Happiness is letting go. So straight away, we have something which is important, fairly important. Happiness, it's worth talking about. It's something, it's an idea, or it's something. But and really everyone would say happiness is what life's all about, not whatever other bullshit people might have told us, which it depends on how you look at happiness. But freedom is another way of putting it. To be free, freedom comes from letting go. It certainly doesn't come from controlling, because controlling is the inverse of freedom. Controlling is where everything is ordered, it gets to be only what it is said to be, what the rule says it must be. Exact opposite of freedom. So we can say, when it comes to the really important things, happiness, freedom, peace of mind doesn't come from controlling. There's no technology for getting peace of mind, and there really can't be. So it's so totally obvious that if I'm really biased that I want this thing to happen but not that thing to happen, and yet what I want to happen is, say, freedom, or let's say freedom, then that out of this complete lack of freedom, where this must happen, that must not happen, one outcome is supposed to be freedom. Freedom is when we skip back and we get it behind ourselves, so to speak, and then say, well, it doesn't matter what outcome happens. This is free to happen. That's free to happen. There's no judgment. There's no bias. Freedom equals no bias. Bias can't lead to freedom. Technology can't lead to freedom. So all these important, really important things in life, affection, love, compassion, they can't be arrived at by technologies. We have the technology to make you feel compassionate, or we have a way, a method, an evidence-based method that can allow you to have compassion for yourself or for others. Forget it. We can't bring in the machine mind and expect to get one of the outputs to be compassion. Or we know that if you meet someone, you cannot make yourself care about them. Either you do or you don't. You cannot make yourself care about them. You can pretend that you care about them, and we might do that, but we cannot actually feel it. It's out of our control. It's not a causal thing. I don't do X and then I love someone or care about them or have them. There is no X to do, so that Y can happen. There is none. It's a pretty basic fact of life that we should really face up to, that all the important things are out of our control, including mental health. And we can't have this technology that will work every time. So if you've got post-traumatic stress disorder, if you've got this, if you've got that, our experts will put into play the latest science, whatever it is about, I don't know, the vagus nerve, whatever the hell. And straight away we feel that, yes, this is a technology now. We've reached that point in human evolution where mental health is a technology, just like all the other technologies. No, it isn't. Of course it isn't. We all know it isn't. So why is there all this bullshit?